now we want to give the floor Sokar Polymer MMS Director Farid Jafarov. Dear ladies and gentlemen,
I would like to make presentation in English and the slides will be in Azeri.
First of all, I wanted to talk primarily just to give a little introduction about our company and the projects that we and the team are implementing together, Sokar Polymer. But then I thought to try to make it a little bit more interesting and to touch on the subjects that are of interest not only in Azerbaijan but in the world as well. First one of which is of course the oil price. Then we'll tell you a little about the role of the Caspian region in the overall crude flows of the Mediterranean. And of course give you the brief description about the Sokar Polymer as a project. So where is Azerbaijan? Clearly the oil and gas strategy of Azerbaijan, which was designed, implemented by our national leader, Heydar Aliyev, endorsed and successfully continued by our president, is one of the most successful ones in the world. And a number of the factors substantiate that. Where does that put us in the recent price drop? First of all, this slide, by the way, is missing one line. I wanted to show you what was the change in the expectations of the crude price year before and as of today. If we would have looked at the Brent curve 1 year ago, the end of the curve actually didn't change that much. Although the price was at the region of $110, $105 per barrel, the end of the curve was at the region of $80, $85 per barrel. So what we see that the long-term expectation on the crude prices is somewhere the same. Although yes, the spot market is weaker for a number of the economic reasons. So what are these reasons and how long do we expect them to continue as Sokar and as an industry? This slide looks a bit complicated, but just give me a little time to explain it. This is actually the slide that Rosneft presented at the recent International Petroleum Week. And here we can see a number of different trends. First of all, the dotted yellow line is the global increase in consumption. But more importantly, the bar chart below is the actual spare capacity in the world. And you can see how that spare capacity changed in the crises of the middle 80s, 2008 as of today. So the crisis, the sharp price drop of 1985 was well substantiated. We had 24% spare capacity in the world. We had the new discoveries of the North Sea, and it was inevitable that the price needed to correct. However, what we saw recently, although the speed of the price drop was somewhere similar, we had about 40% decrease in the prices, there is only 5% spare capacity of the crude production in the world. And nearly half of that is unavailable because of the sanctions, wars, etc., etc. So what are the factors really driving this and how long this can be sustained? Just a few more details comparing the sharp declines of 85, 2008 and today. As I said, the spare capacity does not substantiate the long-term change in the crude prices. Cost of production, and especially marginal cost of production. The marginal barrels today and the swing producer of today are the shale oil producers of the US. And it is a consensus that the marginal cost of producing shale oil is no less than $30 per barrel, and often even the operational expenditures in the region of $50 per barrel. If we look at the full cycle development cost, the new projects of the Mexican basin, again the shale projects in the US, we are looking at the numbers of $80 to $100 per barrel. If we look at the consumption projections, even at the heights of the oil prices, when they were in the region of $105, $110 per barrel, most of the world predicted a stable growth of around 0.6 to 1% per annum on average. And it is a general consensus that the elasticity on the demand side of the crude consumption is no longer there. The supply side is actually more elastic than the demand as of today. So what's the summary of this slide? We do believe that there are no fundamental factors driving the reduction of the crude price as of today, and this is a short-term fluctuation which will be corrected in the near future. What is the future? Trying to guess the future is not that easy. This slide, actually, I liked it. It was a kind of very brief and general description of the global growth in GDP and the growth in the energy that BP our long-term partner shares, and most of the international economists, if you look at the IMF, you look at the BP, we do believe that and the SOCAR as well, we do believe that the world GDP will grow together with the population and is expected to at least double in the next 20 to 30 years. Yes, energy intensity will be reduced, with the overall energy consumption growing by about only 40% in the coming decades. And the composition of that energy consumption, composition of that growth is again subject to the debate. But even if we look at the modest kind of prediction with regards to the crude, we see that crude is there. Crude oil will be there, the consumption will remain, and even maybe at the modest growth rates of about 0.6 per annum, the crude consumption will grow. If you look at this slide with a bit more detail, here actually you can see that the substantial part of the growth in the energy consumption is expected to be captured by coal, because of the price competitiveness of the coal as of today. However, this is in a direct contradiction to the environmental initiatives carried out by Europe and most of the modern world. So if we take out the coal as a part of this equation, there is a big further potential for the growth in gas and crude oil consumption. So we do agree that we will need more gas, we will need more crude. Where it will be coming from? And do we have enough of that? Again, unfortunately, thanks to Mr. Hoshbahzade's speech, not every company has such a great geologist as SOCAR does, which can prolong the life of the deposit beyond the typical 30 years time span. Most of the deposits in the world have about 30 years active lifespan, after which they need to be replaced. So if we look at the expectation, and this is actually, that's why you see the source Total. This is something that was shared with us by Total, and we do agree with that. If we look at the expectation of the crude production till about 2030, we expect that about 40% of the existing fields will need to be replaced. Replaced by what? Yes, there is more crude oil in the world, but the cost of the marginal crude is getting more and more expensive. So to fully capture the required extra 50 million barrels per day, which we'll need by 2030, we'll need to tap even into the $90 per barrel crude in order to be able to satisfy that demand. So to summarize our expectation on the crude oil future, realistically, the long-term expectations are still there. They did not change much. The fundamental factors, there are no fundamental factors supporting the recent change in the prices. And just about the prices, let's be clear, yes, the price discovery function of today is a Brent crude. Brent crude is 1.5 million barrels, about 2% of the overall world production, and is controlled by 4 or 5 major trading houses. How reliable is that price discovery function is another big question. The long-term price level will be supported by the fundamental factor of the increasing population, increasing world GDP, and the cost of the marginal crude. These three factors are there, they are not in a dispute, and if we accept all of them, not much is expected to change in terms of the long-term prices in the world, which we do believe will stay in the region of $80 to $100 per barrel terms in today's terms. So that's all with the crude. The future is bright. For Azerbaijan especially. Now, just a few words, and I will be very brief on this section. I wanted to comment on where Azerbaijan and especially Caspian region is in terms of the global basket. Although we are not that big in terms of the numbers, not as Saudi Arabia, but especially for the Mediterranean, we represent a very important, stable and reliable source of the crude supply. So this is our expectation of the overall Caspian basket production going forward, and we see that we expect even a marginal growth there. More importantly, if we look historically, Caspian has proven to be one of the most stable suppliers of crude oil to the Mediterranean region, with the crude production staying at a region of about 1.7, crude exports to the Med staying at a region of about $1.7 million per day, million barrels per day, sorry. Another interesting factor which is likely to change the availability of the Caspian barrels to the Med is the pipeline capacity. The dotted line that you see on this slide is actual spare capacity of the overall pipelines that take the crude from the Caspian to the world. And that spare capacity, that overcapacity, will bring an extra flexibility to the producers. So unless Med provides the best netbacks, the producer will have the further flexibility to shift their barrels away. Like what Russians are doing today, shifting the barrels to China, Kazakhs are doing that, and we as SOCAR have managed to market our barrels all the way from the east to west coast of the US. So from Los Angeles to New York, in certain refineries are using Azeri Light. Whereas if we look at the recent developments in the European crude basket, we saw that a number of key traditional suppliers to the Europe have been leaving the market. Iran, Libya, Iraq, we don't need to tell the factors that have driven that, but the overall reduction from the supply from the traditional suppliers to the European market was in the region of $2 million barrels per day. Going forward, we do expect the Caspian crude flows to remain one of the most stable suppliers to the Mediterranean market, what makes the access to Caspian barrels of a significant value to the European refiners. And this is just to illustrate Libya. You know, Libya, okay, it is part of the European crude basket. What's going to be expectation on the Libyan crude production in the future? Nobody knows. 100,000 barrels per day or 1 million barrels per day, it all depends. And just a few words about the projects that we and the team are currently implementing. SOCAR Polymer. SOCAR Polymer is a part of the overall downstream chain of SOCAR, downstream petrochemical chain of SOCAR. And just for you to explain what major shifts are happening in this downstream chain and what is SOCAR's vision for the coming decades for its downstream petrochemicals production. First of all, the refinery, the existing refinery is undergoing modernization with increasing capacity. It will feed Azerchemia the changed composition of feedstock. We are shifting from the naphtha, opportunity cost of which is gasoline, to the byproducts of the refining, for which opportunity cost is basically fuel oil, such as non-automotive grade LPG, such as FCC dry gas. I would not tire you with details, but most importantly, the feedstock of Azerchemia is being changed to the lowest price hydrocarbon, from which we will get supply of propylene and ethylene to SOCAR Polymer, which will produce polypropylene and high-density polyethylene. The commodity plastics of today, which are the base for most of the which can be used as a base for almost any other plastic productions downstream. A few words about SOCAR Polymer. I would not tire you too much with the detail of the actual project structure, but why this detail we believe are important. These details and the similar project structure have enabled SOCAR to get 18-year project financing in Turkey for its Turkish refinery without any guarantee from the parent company. Implementation of similar structure of split of the risks between the various participants have enabled us, we are nearing to complete the deal with our partners from Gazprom Bank, which are here today, to finance SOCAR Polymer. So what we're trying to implement, we're trying to create a benchmark structure for, not only for SOCAR, but for Azerbaijan, of bringing the right contractor, establishing the right split of the risk, which will enable us on the project level, without the guarantee from the corporate parent, to tap into the long-term financing, which is needed for the country. So what do we have? We have, of course, the strong support from the government in terms of Sumgait Chemical Industrial Park, which is providing a number of the tax advantages for us. We have the lump sum contract with the contractor, very important. Our contractor is guaranteeing to build us the plant at the desired capacity within the fixed time frame. And in terms of Azerbaijan, of course, this project will, a substantial part of this produce of SOCAR Polymer will replace the current import streams into the country. We expect about 30% of our produce to stay in Azerbaijan and to be further consumed here. What are polymers? What is polypropylene? What is HDP? Just a few pictures for you to realize what is the breadth of the products that can be produced in the country, and more importantly, production of all of these is requiring much more human workforce, and we expect that creation of SOCAR Polymer will have a significant multiplier effect on the employment in the country. Where do we plan to sell it? And this slide actually, it looks strange, but what is the message that we can take from here? When we just were starting this project, we asked our friends from McKinsey to just do a quick market analysis, yeah? Where we can sell our product, how competitive we will be able to match the price term, and the natural market is Turkey. And this is actual analysis of the Turkish market. And all those dark blue spots that you see are the countries that supply polypropylene to Turkey, which do not have their own hydrocarbons. Meaning producers that buy hydrocarbons from the countries such as Azerbaijan, etc., process them and sell with a further added value to the markets such as Turkey. I.e., we are automatically more competitive than them because we have our own hydrocarbon base. This was further substantiated. Now we are at the final stage of our financing, as I said, with the Gazprom Bank. IHS did the market report for us and compared our cost scale to the other producers in the world and the region. And as you can see, Azerbaijan is well advanced in terms of the costs if compared to countries such as, regions such as Europe or Israel or what was the other one? Yeah, Europe or Israel. Future of the plastics, future of the polymers. Future is bright, even brighter than for crude. The consumption is growing. We actually expect that between 20 and 2025, the overall consumption of the plastic would have doubled. More importantly, if you compare the earlier slide and where we have depicted the expected growth in consumption of crude oil, if you recall, it was only 0.6% per annum. If we look at the expected growth in the consumption of the plastics, it's about 6 to 7% per annum. Yes, most of that growth is coming from China, but still, what we as SOCAR Polymer doing for the SOCAR and for the country, we are shifting part of our hydrocarbons into the product niche that is expected to grow at a higher rate. To summarize, we believe that the configuration that we chose as SOCAR for the downstream chemicals industry is the most value-adding configuration. The long-term perspective and long-term competitiveness of the petrochemical projects in Azerbaijan is strong. And we do hope that SOCAR Polymer will become a right example, right structure template that can be replicated in the other projects of SOCAR and Azerbaijan. Thank you very much.